Hey guys. Thanks for that great opening. So my name's Nathan. Today we're here to talk about correlation and automation, improving SOC efficiency or Security Operations Center. Let's get straight into it. So here's the agenda. So we got three things we're going to talk about. Disclaimer, the first two things are to sort of give you a little bit of an understanding of our infrastructure, our setup, how we're getting logs, how we're managing things. The third thing, that's going to get into the meat of this talk and this conversation. So the first part, log ingestion. I'm going to go into our current infrastructure and our setup for that. The second thing, I'm going to talk about fast log access. I will say that keynote was pretty good, and there's some things I sort of want to look into to update this a little bit. So we'll specifically talk about archive and rehydration. And the last thing, like I said, is going to be the meat, which is basically going to be about dealing with lots of telemetry and how we can use correlation and automation. So let's look at a quick who am I. I have 6 years in security. Before, I was a software dev for like a year or two. Currently at Riot Games, I've been there for 3 years. I love it. I am focused on detection engineering, incident response, DevSecOps, and automations. Honestly, I sort of do all the things. Sort of comes with the job. Let's see, I love building tools to make processes easier. I've done some cool stuff with detection as code and some other CI/CD stuff. Happy to talk about it after. Let's see, on the personal side, I have 3 cats. And I used to coach professional Overwatch. So any Overwatch fans or esports fans? Yes, I am one of them. Okay, let's get straight into it. So first, we're going to talk about how we are ingesting data at Riot and what we are ingesting. So first thing, right, most SIEMs, you might have used a SIEM, Datadog is a cloud SIEM, talked about during the keynote. Most of them have log integrations, right? Like, that's awesome. Like Okta, get an API key from Okta, boom, you got your Okta logs. Awesome. But the fact of the matter is, some SIEMs don't have all the integrations. And honestly, the fact of the matter is it's not possible for a SIEM to have all the log integrations. You might have some custom application that is custom to your setup, and you need to ingest those logs. And that becomes really tricky, becomes hard, and can be really annoying. And it can be a time sink. And one of the biggest things I want to talk about is like, how can we save time, right? Make it easier for security engineers or analysts to do their job. So this goes into what we're building. And I'll be honest, it's a very dumbed down version of an architecture diagram. Happy to talk about it more after. If I did, it would probably take literally the whole 30 minutes or 40 minutes of this lecture. But the first thing we were trying to solve is we've got external teams. Like when I mean external, I'm talking about people who don't work at Riot. Maybe like our EDR company or our cloud, our CSPM. And they need to send us logs in a secure manner. We might also have our internal networking team that needs to send us firewall logs or like VPN logs. How are we going to do that in an easy way if there's no integration? And the answer is this very sort of dumbed down architecture diagram. We have basically 2 load balancers. We got a public load balancer and we got a private. Public, well, whitelist IPs for what's needed on specific ports. Private, and same exact thing, basically. This then sends it to an auto-scaling EC2, which is running Vector. Highly suggest checking out Vector if you haven't already. It's actually written by Datadog. I used to use Logstash before. Vector's so much better, oh my God. Then it sends it to Kafka for back pressure, and lastly goes to Vector again in an ECS. And basically there, it's doing a lot of transforms to actually like organize our data to make sure it's in a nice format, so then we can actually ingest it straight into Datadog. Awesome. So now you sort of saw how we're ingesting data. Now let's talk about what we are ingesting. Ooh. Okay. So at Datadog at Riot, we sort of treat it as our source of truth. So what I mean by that is we send everything to it, literally everything. We ingest around 90 terabytes a month, which is a lot of data. I like to sort of break this down into different log types to make it a little bit easier. So we've got like our application logs. You can think of like GitHub, Password Manager, etc. Got our identity logs. You can think of like Okta, Duo, whatnot. Informational, this is maybe something like, maybe like you got audit or compliance or something that you just have to store for those reasons. Or maybe you have a custom app and you want audit logs for authentication or whatnot. Then we got networking, simple VPN, firewall, Zeek, Corelight. We'll talk a little bit about Zeek a bit later if you're not familiar with it. Then endpoint. Endpoint, this is like getting into the meat of actual logs, which is like Windows security logs, 4688, right? Like all that, looking at Sysmon, PowerShell, for Linux, looking at like authlog. And now this is probably the most interesting one that I think we do that I'm not sure how many other people do. But these are alert logs. So what I mean by alert logs is this is actually like an alert coming from another source. So maybe from like our EDR, right? We have like, let's say, I don't know, CrowdStrike, SentinelOne. We get an alert on that. We're actually going to send that log to Datadog. Maybe we have our CSPM, same thing. We're going to send that to Datadog. And it's really important I'm going to highlight this again because this is used a little bit later. The next thing I want to quickly brief on, right, is, yeah, I'm ingesting 90 terabytes a month. Ooh, man, that's a lot, right? Am I actually indexing all of this? And the answer is no, right? Like, I am not. It depends on the use cases, right? Like, certain log sources, I'm not actually writing detections for constantly. Some I'm only needing maybe once in a while. And if you saw, again, in the keynote, they talked about, like, deep frozen storage or whatnot, the new thing, or deep archive. So they got different use cases for different things. So, for instance, right, I want to talk about storage and rehydration. So I have log sources where I don't index it. I literally send it straight to an S3 archive. Datadog manages this right now. We'll talk about it a little bit. And I have use cases where, hey, I have a threat hunt or I have an investigation, and I need to rehydrate those logs, and I need to do it in a manner that is cost-effective, it's time-effective, and I can actually do my job and do stuff fast. So let's look at a quick example on how this sort of looks like in the platform. So storage, right? Let's say I'm looking to actually store my VPN logs. And again, like this could be maybe I'm indexing it for 90 days, and then after that, I want to send it straight to an S3 bucket. So looking at source, pan, firewall, type, global protect. Now the bottom part is the configuration. So that's sort of basically saying what S3 bucket do you want to send it to? You got to set up an IAM role or whatnot, and boom, it's there. So let's look at like an actual like use case or an actual example of when this might be used. So let's say we have some questionable activity from user X or X user, whatever, and it happened, let's say 4 months ago. I don't have that data in my index anymore. That data is, is in my S3 bucket. I know that this user uses VPN logs, and like I'm very sure that most likely the activity to correlate the IP address of the users in my VPN logs. So, I need to rehydrate my VPN logs to actually see who this is. Then I need to actually figure out, hey, is this like okay? Is this user allowed to do this? Like, what's actually going on? So we look at rehydration. And this is one of the things I actually really like about Datadog. And my other tools I've used in the past, rehydration takes forever. Like, I really mean forever, like 6 hours, like 8 hours. At that point, like if you're actually in an active incident, 6-8 hours, that's like eons, right? Like your threat actor has gone through your environment, laterally moved, done a whole bunch of bad things. You're playing catch up. It's honestly like GG, right? What's nice about Datadog's rehydration is two things. The first thing, as you can see here, you can select a time period. So if I know that, hey, I'm looking for like, my logs, my VPN logs for only 2 days, 4 months ago, I can choose that. That now changes, my massive archive that I'm looking to rehydrate to like a lot less. Then, right, I can make a historical view, and then I can set a query. This makes it even more interesting, because now I can say, hey, instead of looking at all VPN logs within 2 days, I only want this one person, npichakani at riotgames.com. And now that even goes even less. So now going from maybe 6 hours, 8 hours of rehydration time, now I'm probably looking at like 15 minutes maybe. It's way less, and this is way more manageable. And it's honestly so much more efficient for any security engineer or analyst to be actually able to just rehydrate stuff, do threat hunts, do investigations, and do incident response. There's also some other cool safeguards here where it's like stop rehydration if volume exceeds more than 3 million, which is great because you don't want to break the bank. And also just like, that's not great if too many logs come in. As well as how long do you want to retain the logs for, right? Because indexing costs money, and we want to save money. Like I said in the keynote, they showed some really new stuff. Very excited to check that stuff out if you haven't. But they might change how we do it in the future based off that. Being able to, they showed frozen indexes and being able to search archives. So definitely looking forward to checking that out. So now you know how we get logs, what logs we get, and how we store logs. So let's move more into our complete workflow and slowly start moving into the root of discussion, which is correlation and automation. So we this is sort of our basic workflow. We got logs coming to Datadog. We send it to our SOAR tool. Basically, Datadog writes an alert, sends it to our SOAR tool, do some automations, and lastly, case management. We're not going to talk about case management. We're really going to focus now on Datadog and SOAR. And first, right, what is SOAR? Wow. Okay, so SOAR is security, orchestration, automation, and a response. It's a mouthful. Honestly, I like to just think of this as automation in the very simple words, just fancy words. But in use cases, right, enrichments, automations, auto-closing alerts, the way I like to also think about this is, have you ever had a task where you're constantly manually doing it, and it's legit the same thing every single time? I'll give you an example. I'm trying to verify Okta activity on a user, and I have to manually go through the logs to see, is like, hey, is this actually legit Okta activity? Is this guy from New York? Is he actually, the new logins, are they still from New York, right? If I'm doing that every single time, I should instantly be asking myself, can this be automated? Like, I should be saving myself time. Another example, right? Back in the day, maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I would get an alert, get an IP address, and I'd be like, okay, so I got an alert, there's an IP address associated with it, let me go to VirusTotal and see if this is malicious, right? And then check in VirusTotal. But again, why am I spending that time doing that? Like, I can be spending time doing other things. There's automations that we'll see an example where you just hit VT, and you just grab, the data. So, talking about that, right? Let's look at a quick example of enrichments. And this will sort of go eventually into correlations. So we got a medium security alert. It's getting sent to our SOAR tool. We are then doing a VirusTotal IP lookup, API call to VirusTotal. You can see a little top right there. We're seeing like 2 vendors saying it's malicious. And then we get our results. Awesome. Now, we got our results. Helpful. Says, at least VT says it's malicious. Sometimes VT can give incorrect data, but we'll trust it. Now, can we take actions on those? And the answer is yes, right? So now we got our VirusTotals coming back. Hey, if we get VT says malicious, let's do some stuff. If it's malicious, let's change the severity. And I want to take a second to like really talk about changing severities, because as someone who reviews alerts a lot, there's a very big difference between a medium and a critical. If I'm on my phone and I'm chilling and trying to relax, I see a medium alert, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm chilling. I'm going to keep eating my lunch. I see a critical alert, I'm like, nope, food's gone, running the laptop, like, what the hell's going on, right? So being able to use other contexts to change alert severity is very, very, very important. Cool. So now that we got a basic understanding, let's move into the root of the problem. And that is data, lots of data, and lots of data, right? Like I said, we ingest 90 terabytes a month. You guys saw all the different log source types. It's crazy, right? Like it's a lot. So let's look at like a sample alert that is very noisy. Port scanning. Obviously, port scanning is important to track. It goes sort of into threat intel, and maybe you do investigations based off that. However, port scanning on public infrastructure will always be noisy, right? Like you got tools out there like Census, Shodan, and whatnot, right? They're just scanning because that's what they do. You can look at this example right over here. This is an example of port scanning. We can see in the past 1 day, we had 144 signals. Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not manually, triaging all of those. I'm sorry. No, not happening. So we'll later talk about how we'll look at this same exact example and see how we can actually do some correlation to still get value out of this alert, but make it more reasonable. So again, the answer is correlation rules, right? So only alert when multiple conditions occur. You can use the same log source, or you can use different log sources. Quick example. Let's say we're looking at a brute force, 20 failed login attempts, plus then a successful login, which then leads to an actual alert. Okay, awesome. The thing that I think is also really important is to understand the group by, right? In this situation, we're looking at the same IP within 10 minutes. That gives a lot of extra context and also helps root out things that could be false positives. Let's look at another example. So this is actually an out-of-the-box example from Datadog using CloudTrail logs. Let's take a peek. So this is AWS. A potential brute force attack on AWS console login, correlated by user identity ARM, a roll-up of 2 hours. Then we're going to look at anonymous assumed role from user by the same ARM over 2 hours. So if we just take that first thing right over there, potential brute force attack on AWS console, if you just think about that, that can happen a shit ton, right? Anyone can go and just start hitting your accounts and doing brute force attacks and whatnot. But the second thing is only going to happen if there is a successful actual action. And then on top of that, it's only going to happen is if like that person starts like trying to assume into a whole bunch of IAM roles and trying to do malicious things. Like there is not really a logical reason somebody should, go in and start assuming into a bunch of roles. The first thing, I'll be honest, I forgot my password a bunch. I've got myself locked out, right? That happens all the time. But I don't want the security team like getting messaged. Like if someone gets locked out, I don't want the security team getting messaged and like freaking out. It's not worth it. We need to add correlation to give a bit more context and actually just make sure that we're looking at something that's actually worth taking the time to investigate. So now that we know how basic correlation works, let's get into the different types in more detail. So, different types of correlation rules. Cool. We got sequence and patterns. We've got threshold. When we think of threshold, we can think of stuff like unusual Google Auth plus maybe 10 gigabytes data exfil in Google Drive. Just a quick example, threshold, thinking about the size of data. When we're thinking about threat intel, we saw an example of that already, VirusTotal. We'll look at maybe some others. When we're thinking of asset, when we think of assets, I like to think of like endpoints, so like host names or whatnot. Or maybe you're thinking of people, right? You're getting more contextual information about what's happening. Behavioral, and this is one of my favorite ones, and we'll talk in this in a bit, but behavioral, I like to always just say unusual or abnormal alert, because those happen all the time, all the vendors are making them, and we're going to talk about that for a bit. And the last one is alert, and that's where some of the special stuff that I think we're doing that I think is pretty cool, and we'll talk about that. So, port scanning, we talked about it earlier. So, correlation, sequence pattern. So the first one, right, we saw it earlier, looking at Zeek port scanning logs. One day, 144 signals found. Yeah, it's too much. I don't want to deal with that. But in the bottom now, we got Okta, rate limit violation. And I think that's 1 week, 4 signals. Now, realistically, honestly, I could probably just do the bottom one and make that its own detection and triage that. But that doesn't really give me a lot of context. There's a lot of reasons why I might get a rate limit violation. People, devs like to do fun stuff with API keys and other things. But if I now group these by IP address and I see someone's publicly port scanning, and then after that, that same IP is also, having a rate limit violation, I'm wondering what the hell is going on, right? Honestly, that should never fire. If it does, that should be a critical alert or high alert. So now let's look into threshold. So this is just a quick, simple, alert I made. So a lot of people talk about brute force attacks, and I talked about it a little bit earlier. My problem with brute force attacks is, like I said, people forget passwords. I honestly, 2 weeks ago, I was talking to a guy when I was in Toronto, and he was like, "Oh, you do correlation alerts. Oh, security. Oh, I'm gonna try and mess with Okta and mess around and see if you can detect me." The dude got locked out, and we definitely detected him. But the problem I have is he was just messing around. That's not malicious activity, right? So let's take a potential successful brute force attack, and then let's actually do another one where we look at a user, the same user, who opened 10 distinct applications within 5 minutes. And I'll say this from personal experience. That second one, a threat actor will do that. When a threat actor gets into Okta, the first thing they will do is they will try and open up as many applications as they can, and they will try and see what they can access and they can touch. So now, with these both together, you've gone again from an alert that's super noisy to something that's going to be a lot more higher fidelity. Awesome. Let's look at threat intel a little bit more. I'm not going to talk about this too much because we already saw an example. The reason why I'm bringing it up again is because we will see this later when we start combining things and different types of correlations. And the other thing I want to allude to is VirusTotal is good, right? But I've definitely put stuff at VirusTotal, and it was saying it was malicious when it definitely was not, right? So the decision you make as an engineer to say, hey, is it malicious, no or yes, that's something that, and you're maybe changing severity off of it, you have to be careful, right? I put stuff in a VT, it's lighting up with 12, 15 signatures. I don't want that becoming a critical if it's false positive, and then I'm freaking out when I shouldn't be freaking out. So the other thing to think about is VirusTotal is just one tool. There are a lot other threat intel tools you can use, and maybe doing multiple lookups with them, and then correlating all those together to get a bit more of a better idea of, is this something I should look into? Should I be raising severity? Should I not? Can I even auto-close maybe? This sort of leads into asset stuff. So I talked about this earlier, like asset, you can think of, endpoints. Like the general thing I like to think of is most alerts have a few fields in common. Like it's either a host name, IP address, or user. And these are like really key fields that we can use to sort of key off things. So in this example, right, we've got a medium security alert. We do an asset lookup and API call to asset management, and then we check maybe it's a domain controller. Now, why does this matter? Well, I'll just say if you get like a Mimikatz alert on your domain controller, you should be very scared. That should not happen, right? If you get it on a PC, obviously you should still be scared, but not as bad. And honestly, if any security alert on a domain controller, that's not a good thing, right? It just shouldn't happen. Like instantly that should become a critical alert, and that's something that you would want to know about. And this is where like asset enrichment data comes into effect, as well as correlation, as well as alert changing in severity. And the last thing I want to mention is the time difference, right, with the severity change. If it's a medium, like fine. If it's a critical, and I know it's a critical, the time it's going to take me to actually go in and start acting on it will be a lot less. Like again, I'm going to skip lunch, I'm going to go straight to it, I'm going to catch up with a threat actor, maybe kick him out before the threat actor actually does stuff. Let's look at another example. And man, this is guest Wi-Fi. I've had some fun experiences with guest Wi-Fi in the past few years is what I'll say. So let's say you're working and you get an alert. Most of you probably know remote desktop tools aren't great. Most people block them because threat actors love using AnyDesk, TeamViewer, all that stuff, or other VPNs like Zscaler or whatnot. So I'm working, it's like 4 p.m. and I get an alert, and it says like Zscaler remote tunneling. And I'm wondering, what the hell? How is this even happening? Like, this shouldn't happen, like, in our environment. Like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I got an IP address. I'm like looking up that IP address. I'm like, what's the host name for that? Like, what network is it on? Like, I'm trying to like spending probably, this is like 3 years ago. I think I probably spent close to like 2 hours. And part of that's also because, we didn't have a great way of associating IP address with host names, especially when it was dynamic. But after those 3 hours, I ended up figuring out, I talked to the networking team because I was like, you know what? I can't find this on our corp network. What the hell is going on? And the answer is it was on our guest Wi-Fi, right? And like, sure, there's a whole discussion of do we care about if it's on a guest Wi-Fi or not or whatnot. But the fact of the matter is if I knew it was on my guest Wi-Fi from the start, I would have saved like 3 hours. So this is one that I think matters a lot. And this sort of goes into the aspect of like, hey, should I actually alert or can I just auto-close? Am I okay as a security team saying, hey, someone is just like running some tool that normally we don't allow, on my guest Wi-Fi? Fine, yeah, we'll auto-close it. Maybe you see like someone's trying to crypto mine on your guest Wi-Fi. Well, in that case, maybe you don't auto-close that. Maybe you want to see why the hell they're trying to crypto mine on your guest Wi-Fi. Because that's sort of not okay. So, moving into behavior. Ooh, behavior. So, like I said earlier, behavior is like unusual stuff, abnormal stuff. And honestly, any tool I've used always has behavioral detections. And let's talk about why. Because the fact of the matter is most incidents I've been in, there was always a behavior detection that caught the malicious actor. But the problem is they're hella noisy because they will find false positives. Like, for instance, I was literally just in Toronto like 3 days ago, and before that I was in LA. I'm telling you, my Okta right now is, it's buzzing, right? Like, they're like, what the hell is going on? But like I said, a lot of these are caught by a lot of malicious activities are caught by these detections. So how do we deal with it? Before we go into that, let's look at an example. So I just talked about Okta, right? This is like literally straight out of the log source. Behaviorals. New city positive, new country, new device, new geolocation, new IP, new state, velocity. Then it gives me a risk. Oh, cool, I got a risk. Nice, medium. Says location and device. So again, like for me, I probably maybe would have got a medium, maybe a low, I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is that people get new devices every day. Like, and if you're in a big company, you're going to have people getting new phones, new devices. You're going to have people traveling. I don't think that'll be a medium in those situations. It might be a high, depending on how much it is. Now, are you going to start alerting on this? I don't know. Let's see how noisy it is. Well, in the past week, we've had 22 signals for that. Okay, 22 signals, 3 a day. That's a bit manageable. I can maybe do it. But this is one source. This is just Okta. We've maybe got AWS. We've got other identity tools, right? Let's look at AWS unusual detections. I love GuardDuty. Like, I've had so many AWS investigations where, again, a GuardDuty alert found it. But look how noisy this is. Unusual IAM policy creation, 72. Unusual IAM role creation, 44. And, people's AWS cloud, people do a lot of crazy shit in their environment. So, of course, GuardDuty is going to, blow up. And the other thing I'll say, right, is, the fact of the matter is there are some behavioral detections that are high fidelity. And I want to make that clear. But you have to differentiate and understand, hey, these behavioral detections are high fidelity, these aren't, and they're really noisy. So how do we get value, right? We don't want to be in a situation where one of these hits, and then we don't see it because we're filtering it out because it's too noisy, and that was actually malicious activity, and now we're playing try to catch the bad guy when we're 6 hours late. So this sort of goes into correlation alerts. And this is sort of what I think is really, really cool, what I think we're doing. And Datadog honestly makes it possible and very easy. So hopefully you've seen Signal Explorer. Datadog has it for a lot of their different tools. It looks like this. And if you look at this right now, it says in the past day we have almost 500 signals. And you're probably asking me, this is our live environment, by the way. You're probably saying, Nathan, what the hell? You have 500 signals in one day? What the hell are you doing? You're talking to me about correlation automation, and that's way too much. That's not feasible. So, but let's actually talk about what's happening here. So if you actually look at the different colors, right, gray is actually an info alert, or info, right? Yellow, I think that's probably low. Orange is maybe medium. Red's probably high or critical or whatnot. So if you look at this, in that sea of bars, almost everything's info. Part of info is also a few dev as well. So what did we do here? We actually made our noisy behavior alerts info alerts. We'll talk about why in a second. So let's look at an example, and we'll see why. So like I said earlier, right, most alerts have a few common fields. They have hostname, IP, username. So let's say we got an Okta potential brute force. I just love using this as an example because everyone can relate. Hits our SOAR tool. Now what we're going to do is we're going to grab that username and actually hit our Datadog Signal Explorer through API. And we're going to do it through an API call, really easy. And then we're going to see if anything else popped up. Example, hey, look, we got Okta unusual behavior. Wait, so you're telling me I got an Okta potential brute force attack plus I got Okta unusual behavior? That's weird, right? Now I'm still getting the clarity of those noisy behavioral detections while having my normal detections. And like I said, you might have, behavioral detections that are high fidelity, and maybe that'll be up there with the Okta potential brute force. So what happens when this occurs? Well, obviously, after you get your API, you hit Datadog Signal Explorer, it finds something. The first thing is hey, were there other alerts? Oh, there was none? Well, maybe let's just keep same severity, let's auto-close, right? If it's an Okta potential brute force, again, the chance of that happening for people forgetting passwords or not is pretty high. And if I correlate that with unusual behavior, well, then maybe I'll care about it. Because if I see potential brute force and then someone's moving different locations, new devices, that's definitely abnormal. I actually want to alert on that. But if I don't actually see that unusual behavior, then I'm going to auto-close, right? It doesn't make sense looking into it. So let's put this all together. We're going to look at threat intel. We're going to look at asset. We're going to look at behavior. We're going to look at threshold. And it sort of looks like this. So again, we got an Okta potential brute force, right? Now we're grabbing those key unique fields that, again, exist in almost every single type of alert. You may not have all of them, right? But you'll have probably two. Let's grab them, user agent, IP, user, and let's start correlating and hitting each different thing. So let's grab user agent, let's hit the Signal Explorer, let's see if there's any alerts with that user agent. Let's grab IP address, do the same thing. With user, same thing. However, also, for certain assets, maybe there's other things we can do, right? With maybe user agent IP, we can actually check threat intel, whereas with user, maybe a bit hard to check threat intel. You might have some threat intel tools that have good data breaches and stuff that maybe you can use. check it for password dumps or whatnot. Definitely useful. But some, maybe you don't. And then for user, let's check authentication, right? Like maybe let's check to see like if there's anything abnormal there. Let's check alerts. Again, those will hit the behavior stuff. And lastly, let's combine all this logic. And then based off that, we can choose if we want to alert, don't alert, I didn't add it there, or change severity. And this will give us a lot more clarity on what's going on. And I want to give another example. When we say check alerts, earlier I talked about like EDR alerts. I talked about CSPM, right? That matters. Let's say we've got an Okta, we've got a user, and that person now, we're going to check alerts, and we're actually going to see some AWS weird activity in maybe our CloudTrail logs or GuardDuty, right? Or maybe on the host name for our EDR alerts, we're going to see something. So now, again, we're checking multiple different types of telemetry. We've got cloud, we've got endpoint. We also have network. We have Zeek stuff too, right? So maybe we've got Surcot alerts coming in, and we want to see if those are all getting hit. So this gives us sort of a complete picture of what's going on. Awesome. So, in summary, I hope I showed you the true power of correlation and automation. There are out-of-the-box detections that Datadog uses that have correlation, but that's only the starting point, right? Like, you can build correlation detections on your own. You can start with a correlation detection that correlates two events from the same source. Then you can also find a way to correlate stuff from different signals, right? And don't forget the power of automations. Datadog has tons of data in it. And they talked about it during the keynote. Someone talked about how they use it for a source of truth. And I honestly think there's a lot of meaning to that and a lot of value to that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so Datadog has lots of data. I showed you how we integrate it with our SOAR and Datadog's detection SIM. We started with Datadog detection signals, and then we put them in our SOAR. And then when appropriate, we grabbed additional data from Datadog through API. But there are many ways to handle automating these signals. Hopefully, you guys are thinking, looking at this, and you're thinking. Like the whole point of this presentation is to hopefully, start a discussion, get some thoughts, think about, how are we doing it? Is maybe there's something I'm missing, right? Maybe something that you learned, and maybe now you can go and implement it. That's what I'm hoping, you got from this. And lastly, by combining the magic of correlation and detections with automation, we've saved so much time. I can't tell you the amount of time where I'm like, man, I'm doing the same alert, doing the same thing for my run book, and I'm like, backlog ticket, automation, and as soon as that's done and I'm finished that automation, I'm just like, yes, yes. It feels so good, so good. Well, yeah, and I hope you guys enjoyed my talk. I want to give a massive shout out to my whole team. They're obviously not here. A lot of the stuff that's in this presentation, whole team worked on. Happy to sync after questions and meet people and talk about stuff. This is like one of the things I've done. I've done a lot of detection as code, talked about how we're like scaling this, fast remediation, purple teaming. We actually done stuff with Stratus Red Team, which I talked about in the keynote. And I'd love to hear about what other people are doing. So yeah, questions.
Got about 5 minutes for questions. If you have any, that microphone in the middle is the place to go.
Hi, my name is Melissa. Thanks so much for the great speech. One question with all of the hype around AI and the BITS AI security analyst, I'm sure you were expecting such a question. What does your team internally see the role of using AI versus using some of these SOAR automations? And how's your team approaching this?
Yeah,
Thank you.
So it's a great question. I knew this was going to come. We actually internally, like one of my staff developers on our team, he actually built his own AI tool using ChatGPT and whatnot, and basically had it set up to correlate with basically all our tools through API, and honestly, AI would grab everything, right? It's useful. The problem with AI is it cannot make decisions for us. I personally don't trust AI to make decisions for us, right? It is great for enrichment. And in that SOAR, honestly, in that example, what I also do sometimes is I use AI for summarization, right? We'll grab all this data through API and then we'll put it to AI, hey, summarize this data in a nice pattern for me so I can read it easily within 5 minutes or something. Do some nice prompt engineering. So yes, to your point, absolutely. Some of this stuff, you can just get a RAG, set stuff up, and hit all the APIs and grab it. It may not do exactly what you want, and that's where the problem, where I get a little right? And that's why I think there has to be a good balance between them both, right? You need to you can build it, but maybe also still connect it to your store, and have your store still take maybe some actions that you are okay with and you're good with. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, hi. Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice. I have a question regarding the correlations and then the automations. Do you use only the index logs, or even we can bring up flex logs into these automations and combine them?
Oh, thank you so much. I totally forgot to mention this. We only use flex logs. So for our 90-day indexing, we're only using flex logs. We're not using hot data at all. And that's just because it's cost effective, right? I'm really curious with the new index that they mentioned at Keynote. Literally, I was messaging my team. I'm like, oh my God, got a new thing. Do we actually need to send it to S3? Oh, we can search archive, right? So it's going to change a lot of our processes, honestly, right? And we've obviously got to look at the cost and see what makes sense. But we fully use flex.
Got it.
We don't use hot at all. And again, when we do need to do stuff, we'll send it to an S3 bucket directly, and then we'll archive it.
Got it. Thank you.
Hi, just want to thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question, and I'm not sure if maybe it's a bit personal. Just last year, when the LCK Studio got DDoS, do you know anything about that? And, did Datadog help you out with that?
Yeah, so that's something, it's a fun conversation topic, and fortunately I can't answer that one. That's a little proprietary information. I'm
All good.
sorry.
All good. All right, thank you.
It's a good question, though. Any other questions? I see maybe one person. Okay.
So, hi. That was a great presentation, by the way. So you talked a little bit about asset management, right? Yeah. So how are you correlating assets in Datadog, essentially? How do you do that?
So the answer for at least Datadog for asset correlation is we don't, right? We have our asset management tool that we use that has connectors to our ADR and a bunch of other things, AD and whatnot. But what we do in Datadog is we really do a really good job about standardized fields, right? So I make sure when we ingest log sources that we are actually mapping things to what we standardize as user.name, endpoint.hostname, and whatnot, so that when it actually goes to the SOAR tool, I don't have to change anything, right? And that's part of the onboarding. And I'll be honest, my tool I was using before, I'm not going to name it, but that was it took forever to do all the field mapping. It took forever to do that. With Datadog, I could probably do it in 20 minutes, if that, right? So the answer, field standardization and having a decent asset management tool that you can hit.
I figured that'd be the answer. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. Any other questions? Oh, maybe one more? Nope. All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys.